first of all, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's an honor to be here. I'm not myself a BPM expert in any way, but I hope what I'm going to demonstrate will be interesting to you. I think it's an example of where different technology paths are meeting each other, and you know, is it one or is it the other? So let's take it away. I'm going to first tell a little story to make you kind of understand the problems we solve, make a demo, then take a little bit back on the background, and then I'll do a more deep dive at you know, how it was done at the end. So this is my Ferrari dealer. You like it? Yes. You know, I need to sell some of these Ferraris, and it's actually pretty difficult because we have all these financial hard times, and you know, these are expensive cars. So how do I find the right prospects to buy these cars? Well, what if I could find out who sold their stock options to their company today, made a lot of money? And if I at the same time could find out where do they live, how much is their yearly salary, you know, what is their age, what is their gender? And if I combined all that information, I'd probably get some damn good leads out of that, right? So I'm a little bit smart about that. So, okay, there's a website called SEC Filings. I'm sure most of you heard about it. And there you can see everybody who is selling shares every day, and there's tens of thousands of filings reported every day. So here you can actually go and look up if Mark Zuckerberg, he sold some of his shares and how much he made out of it, etc. So that's one source of information. But they don't really tell how old you are, how much you make, and your salary, etc. But Bloomberg, they have an executive profile section where you can actually then go in and see, okay, this guy, he's 55 years old, he makes $7 million a year, and so on. And if you combine this, you can probably make some pretty good leads. It's okay. So I started spending every morning, you know, looking into SEC filing, copy pasting the data into a spreadsheet, sorting the data based on, you know, age, region, etc., and finding some leads. The problem is there's more than 10,000 new filings every day, right? So the idea is good, not very practical. But then I heard that the Ferrari, the mother company, they bought this product called Kapow that supposedly can automate these manual processes. So I downloaded it, tried it, and oh, I forgot to say one thing. When I find these leads, I need to put them into Salesforce so my reps can actually call on them. So I found this product that can now automatically go out and extract the data from these sources. Many of them, if not all of them, have no APIs. Enrich it, that means combine the data, match up name in one data source with name of the other, and match them up in a database, and throw it directly into a spreadsheet. So the only thing I have to do is basically look through the spreadsheet and then upload it to Salesforce. But then Kapow came out with this new version. It's called 9.3, which has something they call caplets. You can call this small, lightweight process apps. And with them, I can actually now build these process apps very quickly. I can go in, I can filter the data, I can schedule when I want to harvest the data, I can filter the data, I can say this, 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 and this is a good lead, push a button, and gets into Salesforce. So let me show you that. Demo. One second. Okay, so here I am in Kapow's management console, and in here you can see the health of your servers. You can schedule what we call robots to run. You can check out your automations, etc. And we also have this thing called caplets, which is really an application zone for applications that's built for the business users. And I created 2 of them here, one called Harvest SEC Leads, this one, and if I open that, I can say, okay, rather than me manually going in every day and copy-pasting that stuff, why don't I just run that every day at 1 a.m., right? And I'll schedule that. So now, whenever I come to work in the morning, the schedule will run, and I'll have the data available in my database. Okay, so now let's go back. Presumably, I ran this the last couple of days, so I have data in my database. So now I want to search. So I say, okay, if you can afford a Ferrari, you probably had to make at least $300,000 on selling those shares, right? So let's type in 300,000 here. You probably have to have an annual salary of at least $1 million to support having this car. And I think there is a bigger bet to find potential buyers in sunny California. Okay, so let's start this. And it's now filtering through the database. I don't have to do that manual Excel sorting anymore. And I can now go in and look at the data here. And we can actually see how the data got populated up into a graph. And I can see the age distribution over here. And now I probably like to think that the people who want to buy this car, they're probably 40s to 50s. So let me zoom in on that data right here. So I'm exploring the data. And they probably like to see who made the most money, right? Because they probably have the most money at hand. And if we're looking up here, we can see, Musk Elon from Tesla. He made quite a lot of money, $1 billion. But he's probably not going to buy my Ferrari, right? He has a pretty nice car, and I don't think it will be good for his image. But maybe Sheryl Sandberg would like to buy one. And maybe this guy, Peter Oppenheimer from Apple, would like to buy one, etc. So I'm selecting some of those, but before I do something about it, let me go to my Salesforce account. Let me do a refresh, and we can see we have no leads, right? So the whole idea is that I go back here, and those that I select here, I commit. And I just type in my Salesforce ID, and then the lead source being SEC, and then I say commit. And this is now using the Salesforce APIs and uploading data to Salesforce and actually giving me a link over here. And if I click on that, we can see Sheryl now populated into Salesforce, and even with a link to her Business Week profile. Sorry, yes, Business Week profile here, where we can see, how much she makes per year, how old she is, and all of that stuff. Okay, so I automated a tedious manual process that is booming my business. I'm selling a lot more cars. I'm buying up all the other shops because now I found the formula to find the right buyers. So let's go back and look at my slides now. So what is it really that's happening in the world? We all hear about big data, right? And most of us think of big data as huge volumes of data. But it's actually another thing as well, which I think is more important. It's the biggest big data challenge is there's an explosion of data spread, of data variety. Data is everywhere in all kinds of formats, and trying to normalize it and make standardized on it is just it's a hard game because you have data everywhere globally. And the good thing, though, is there's a lot of value out here. Just look at me as a Ferrari dealer. I'm picking some data sources that probably most people wouldn't even think you could get to combining that and adding a lot of value. And a lot of companies are doing that. But also, getting to the data can be a huge challenge. So there's one thing good here, though. How do we access all these applications and data sources? We do it through these devices. And behind those devices, we have these guys, right? Web browsers. Almost all applications that you access today, except for some legacy green screen stuff, you are accessing through a web browser. And this is unique, because it's really the first time in the history of IT that there is one common standard to access almost any application, right? So you can now get to all of this stuff here from a browser, but you still cannot tie them together, integrate them together, and automate the process. And this is really the secret behind what we do. If we have an example here, we have a person doing some processes with some on-premise external apps, and they're wasting their time copy and pasting, right? Then we say, OK, we need to make an automation of that. We need to have some APIs so we can integrate. And typical API integration, first of all, there has to be APIs. They have to be documented. And if there's no API, you have to go to the database. Going to the database, we all know, is very cumbersome. You have to kind of reinvent the business logic that ties the tables together, all of that stuff. And then you have all these barriers down here, firewall security, external, et cetera. But this is the way you have to access that data and make that person, build an application so that person gets more efficient, right? Requires coding, you depend on another party to build the APIs for you, et cetera, et cetera. So if one of them doesn't have an API, you're stuck. You can put all the resources in it you want. You're never going to automate this process, and you're stuck with a manual process. And this is really where synthetic APIs comes in. Leveraging on the fact I said before that almost any application today that's meaningful is browser-based, and using very unique Kapow browser technology that we spent more than 50 man years just building that browser engine. We can actually, our customers can, with our product, hook up to what you see behind the scene on a website, the logic and the data, and drive that application as an API, and thereby turning it into a full read-write API. That means if you can see the data in a browser, if you can perform the transaction in a driver, in a browser, you can actually now use it as an API. And that means you don't have the code. You don't have to be waiting for somebody to deliver you an API. You can leverage the existing HTTPS security protocol and login credentials, and you can do this in no time with no coding. And I'll show you how it's done. That means with the synthetic API, you complete the picture up here. You can build the applications for your employees and automate the processes. So the way we do this, and I'll demo it now, is using a combination of something you all know really well, workflow, editing, and integration. And build by example. You always build these workflows, and we call them robots, by example, and I'll show you how that's done. And then the other thing is, if you want to deploy that as a mini app to your business user, the only thing you have to do is push one button, and it's built, deployed, no coding. I'll show that as well. So let's get back to my second demo. OK. So what we have here is our development environment. We call it Kapow Design Studio. And probably looks familiar to you in many ways. Over here we have project views with different projects. It is also roles-based using your LDAP server. So some people can see some projects, some can see others, et cetera. Up here you have a workflow editor. And it's a full drag and drop editor, I can take this element and drag it over here. I can do Control-Z to undo that, and so on. So it's complete drag and drop visual, full undo, redo visual flow editor. And we can also do business rules, so I can test something. Actually, this data here is some sports event, and I'm just testing if there was a win, an even, or a loss. And down here, you can see the data. Because the important thing here is when you have to build this kind of stuff with no coding, you have to present the data the way that the business user knows the data, right? This is XML, so the closest they can know the data is actually with XML, but I'll show what I mean in a second. And for example, here, this is a robot that logs into American Express with any credential and pull up my American Express bill. This is Excel. So here we have a native Excel viewer to show you Excel so you can work directly in and out in Excel files. And let me give you another example. I was at Gartner AADI last year, and they sent me this zip file with all their presentation. I'm sure some of you have seen these, right? My God, which presentation do I look for, right? They all have these weird names, but they are a little bit nice to you because they do supply a file here called readme HTML, and if I open that, it actually will show me the translation between all the different files. Okay, that one called B2 is actually this presentation. So what if I could just run through this file, use that information, and rename all the files to the right names, right? That's another thing you can do here. It took me 2 minutes to build a little robot that goes in here and load my local C drive, and it clicks on the README file, and it opens the README file, and loop through all of these, and then extract the file name out of each of these, and then create a new file name and rename the file. And if I go into our debugger here and I just run this, we can see that it now renamed all of these files. We go back to my directory here. You can see, oh, the files are now readable, right? So another just human manual task that you easily can automate in this world. OK, now back to the example of the SEC and how we work with websites. So here we have a robot that I built that goes to SEC and loads the front page of SEC, which we have here. So in this case, where you're working with a website, the human most readable format is what you see in a web browser. So that's what you work with, right? And you can go in here. Then I can create a loop. I can click on one of these and say, OK, I want to create a loop over each of these. And that's what I did here. And you can see how it's now looping through this visually like this. So it's running on live data you built by example. All right. We don't have any, of the paradigms you traditionally know with data, where you have the data definitions and all of that. Here we also work with the live data the way they are. Right? We don't care what format it is. You just work with the data the way they are. And if we go further over here, we can see what we're doing here. Here we are actually at SEC. The data is actually available as XML. And then we go a little bit further down here. At this point, we are actually loading we're actually loading the Bloomberg Business Week page right here. And we start to extract the age, for example, here. And the way you would extract the age, you just basically click on the age right there. Then you right-click on that and say, OK, I want to extract this number into my age field, like that. So here we can see it extracted that age, and it inserted an extra age step up there. I don't want that, so I'll just hit undo, and it takes it away again. But just to show you how extremely easy it is to build, it doesn't take much longer to build one of these robots than to do it one time manually. OK, so now I build all that, and now I can deploy that. So I can say deploy this. And it will upload that data out to my management console, which we have here. And we go to the repository, and we do a refresh. There we go. We can see that we now uploaded this today here, and it is now immediately available as an API, a REST API. So if I want, I can call this service. It doesn't take any input because it's just going to extract all the data from SEC filings Bloomberg. But if it dictate input, I would actually, it will show input here as well. I can show you another example. This is one that's logging into LinkedIn and pulling data. You can see here I have a REST API, completely automatically generated, running in the cloud or on-premise in a scalable failover environment. And here I have username, password as input, etc. And then to build the caplets, I go over to caplet here, and I say, OK, I want to build a new caplet. I'll call it next or SEC Lead 2. I'll create it. I can click here to find an icon. So let's see if we have an icon coming up. Well, CNN is probably not that good. Here's an icon. So now I create a little icon for my applet. The next page is I go and I add an action. And that's a robot. And the robot is search for SEC lead right there. And then we have that added. Then we go down and say OK. And then we can go in. OK, we don't want more robots. Then we can go to the result page, the leads page. And we can now go in and select a template. And I want a template where I have a graph at the top. And I want to make that graph a histogram. And at the bottom here, I want to be sure that I get the age of the person and the sales revenue in like this. And then I want to add an action. And that action I want to be submit to Salesforce like that. And then I say OK here. I apply my changes. I enable this, and I go to my platform here, and I install the new caplet, and there we go. I open it, and it's built. And I can run it just as we did before. So just a few clicks, I built a mini application. OK? So I think that was the end of my demo. Let me just very quickly show one more slide here. So I know we talked about Gartner here, and one report I read last year at that show was this thing what they call unmet application need, right? I don't know if anybody of you seen this. They basically take all the application a company need and take the value of it up there, and then they rank it on the other side on how much cost it would be to build it. And they get a hard stop up here, the blue line is, the value that this application delivered to the company is higher than the cost to build it. What Kapow is doing for our customers, they're moving this line far out here, because building the applications is now so much cheaper that you can build a lot more of those applications. So that's just an interesting story there. This is about us, and a quote from one of our customers: before Kapow, 3 months to automate one B2B process. With Kapow, we did 100 in 3 months. So that's all. Any questions?